some hands.
You're on the stage. I'm taking the chair. I'm sorry. I'm going to just move these chairs just a tad. Okay. Are not in the right spot. Very good. We are allowed to take your mask off. We're allowed to take them off. I was watching the ones yesterday. They were, and they had them off.
Oh, they had them.
There's got to be some perk.
Is that okay, you think? Somebody steals that during my panel. I'm going to be upset. That is true. Good point, good point. Yeah. Yeah, but I live in Virginia, in Southwest Virginia. Mm-hmm.
Keisha Wyatt from the Mavericks. We met with Pam.
Oh, that is so.
Hi. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. It's afternoon, right? Yeah, it's 12. So, yeah, good afternoon, everyone.
Kevin's late, so we know it's afternoon.
I really want to thank everybody that's here in person and also virtually. We try to be safe, but obviously we want to welcome you all again to another edition of the Female Quotient Equality Lounge. My name is Keisha Wyatt. I'm with the Dallas Mavericks, also a founding governing board member of the Pro Sports Assembly, and this is my partner in crime, Antony. If you want to just say who you are, what you're with, real quick.
Good morning. I'm Antony Bonavita. I'm with the Cleveland Cavaliers and also a founding board member of the Pro Sports Assembly. And we're excited about this partnership and excited about this panel this morning or this afternoon. And it just what a great time it is for us to be here together and continue to see diversity and inclusion just continue to make great steps and strides. We have a long way to go, and I think that's what our mission and vision is with the Pro Sports Assembly, is to help all of us understand what we need to do to continue to make the right steps forward for a more diverse and inclusive workplace in sports.
Yeah, thank you, Antony. So definitely want to just encourage everybody that's here and also virtually, please check us out at theprosportsassembly.org, where you can learn more information, become a member, because we are on a mission, obviously in partnership with the Female Quotient, to be able to really change the look of the front offices, whether that's a team, league, or union. So, no more from me and from Antony. I want to give it over to Kevin to really introduce everyone today. So thank y'all again for coming.
Thank you.
Yep.
Kevin?
So, Antony, thank you. All right. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us for this inspirational conversation. One of the things that we've done in Cleveland is that we have actually brought the three sports teams together, the Browns, the Indians, and Cavs. And we have done so around social justice and all of the kind of elements over the past year. But we'll have an opportunity today to hear from our three teams, representatives, three amazing female executives for the Browns and Cavs, to talk about their journey in sports. So with that, I'd actually like to start with Michele. And Michele, the first question, and Anna, you're next, you're on deck, and then Shelly. The first question is, and if you could take maybe an hour just to give a little a minute, just a little background around why is this conversation important to you, and actually, why did you accept to have this conversation with us?
First of all, thank you for having me. I was privileged to be asked to be on the panel today. I've been in the business for 20 years, so I've been with the Browns organization for actually 3 weeks, so it was actually a great honor for me to be asked to be on this panel. It's an interesting element of when you're continuously in this this opportunity. I mean, I just believe that every day that it's an opportunity to continue to speak and mentor and motivate people to be able to come to the table and to be able to continue to promote the opportunity for women and for diversity in organizations. And I've been privileged to have success and have reached the absolute top in different organizations. And it can be done, but it needs to continue to be a focus for everybody else to continue to have that fight.
Okay. Thank you and welcome. Anna.
Thank you.
Same question to you, and we'll give you an hour or two, okay? All right, we'll take a minute. But if you can, why are you here? Why is this conversation important?
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Kevin, for having me, and to the Female Quotient as well. Going off of what Michele said, I think it's important that women recognize that there's women in sports, that there's opportunities for women in sports. I believe that women add a lot of value to sports. We offer perspectives and ideas that, no offense, Kevin, that men don't always offer. And so I think it's important that women can see that those of us that are in this field and they can hear. I'm really looking forward to hearing from the other women on this panel about their experience, because I think I always enjoy hearing about other perspectives and other experiences from different sports and how the challenges and the benefits of being women with different organizations and different teams.
Okay, thank you. And Shelly, please.
Yes, thanks. Thank you for having me, Kevin. Pleasure to be here with Michele and Anna, and thanks to the Female Quotient for putting this on, and the Cleveland Sports Commission. You know, I think I'm excited to be a part of the conversation because, one, you can't change anything if people don't know about it or talk about it, so that's the main reason. And then also because from an organization standpoint, you know, with the Cleveland Cavaliers, we're committed to it, right? Committed to change. So top down starts there from our league, from the NBA, they're committed to it. And then, you know, I'd say personally, I'm happy to be part of the conversation because it affects me, right, as an African-American female woman in sports. And it affects, I've got a 19-month-old little girl, Ivy Grace. It's going to affect her. So what we do today and the conversation we have today will affect her in the next generation. So this conversation is very important, and all of the conversations we continue to have about it.
Yeah, so Shelly, let me just stay with you for a moment. As you know, I have 4 daughters, and 2 of which are in sports and what have you, and the conversation that they ask me about, and they're young in their careers, is, well, Dad, can I have a family? Can I balance? How am I going to balance this? There's so many things I want to do. And you just referenced the fact that you're a mom, you're also a wife. And tell us a little bit about what you do, what kind of your title and what that entails. And then as a female, do you find that there's maybe an unfair balance of all the things that are put upon you and still all the other things you have to do at home?
Yeah, absolutely. So a new mom, again, she's 19 months. So I'm the Senior Vice President of Global Partnerships. So our team manages all of our corporate partner relationships. So that's managing current relationships, growing those relationships, meeting their objectives, as well as driving business and revenue, new business into the organization. So it's a sales function as well. And we work over with all of our properties. So we have a G League team, our Canton Charge team. We have a hockey team, Cleveland Monsters. And we have an esports team, Cavs Legion. So those revenue streams for all of those teams fall under my area of the business. And so when you think about what that means, and you said, is there a balance? There's not a balance. Women absolutely have more responsibility, but I also think that makes them stronger. I think that makes them have the ability to have to learn how to prioritize. Do I have it figured out? No, but I have also been able to luckily see a lot of great women in the space do it. And figure it out. And so, you know, I think the interesting part is you have to have help and support. I'd be lying if I told you I could do it by myself. I can't. However, I've got a really strong support system. So my mom actually moved in with us for a year from Louisiana. My husband, who's also in sports and has a demanding schedule, he supports when he can. And so I think this sort of, we'll call it COVID space, has allowed men to see what women are going through and their scheduling and what they have to do, and hopefully like kind of a wake-up call to help out. And I've seen that. I've seen that on my team even. You know, I've got, you know, every household is different. Let's start there. So, you know, you might have a stay-at-home mom, you might have a stay-at-home dad, you might have 2 dynamic working parents, right? And everybody has to play a part. And so I think what's really important is that you have a strong support system. And the answer is yes, you can do it. But to answer your question directly, I think it makes women even stronger in the workplace because they do have to balance all of that.
So thank you. And I'm really taking away from that the whole strong support system around you to help you do all the things in which you need to do. So Anna, I know your title is Coordinator of Language and Education. I also know that you flew in from Arizona, was it?
I drove up from Virginia.
Okay, you came in from Virginia. Same question to you. The balance of all that it takes for your job, and maybe offer to the audience, you know, what do you do? Because I know it's much more than language and education coordinator. So can you just offer us a perspective of what is your background, what do you do, and then the balance between career and being a female in the industry as well?
Sure, thanks, Kevin. So education and language coordinator, I work in player development. In baseball, we have a pretty massive minor league system with up to a couple hundred players, many of whom sign from the Dominican Republic, Venezuela, and other international, mostly Spanish-speaking countries. So I focus primarily with our younger athletes who are as young as 16, running their high school programming and their English language programming, and then also supporting our domestic players from the United States, helping them finishing their requirements for college if they sign before they graduate. And I started with Indians in 2016 as our major league translator and interpreter, working with the major league teams. So I've been on both sides with our older guys and now working with our youngest guys. And I think going off of what Shelly said is what I've noticed on both sides of baseball ops, in the major leagues and the minor leagues, is how demanding this job is for everybody. There's a lot of travel. In baseball, you know, the major league team is 162 games in 180 days, going all over the United States, and everybody in that group relies on some sort of support system. So my male colleagues and our athletes really rely heavily on their wives or their partners to help maintain the household, to help them move from place to place, because we're all in Arizona, Cleveland, the Dominican Republic at different times throughout the year. So I think sometimes I want to tell my male colleagues, do you guys know that I do, you know, the same amount of work that y'all do, and then at home I do everything for my household that your wife does? Because I don't think they really notice that, because we rely so heavily on that support system, and so it's balancing all that, like Shelly was saying. I agree with her that it does make us stronger in home and in the workplace as well.
Okay, thank you. That's an interesting perspective at the end. It's like painting a picture for your male colleagues that they take for granted.
Right.
Okay, so Michele, I'm surprised you're even here on this stage right now, only because you have this major draft going on and you're VP over events and several other things. So first, thank you for carving out the time. But I want to kind of throw the same question out to you from a balance of kind of you as a female, your career, either home or other challenges and obstacles that you're facing.
Yeah, I mean, so my position's a little bit different in a lot of things. So currently my position with the Browns organization is that I'm the VP of Event Development. So my role is to start looking at developing events in their facilities. So at First Energy Stadium and at the 2 stadiums down in Columbus. So looking at the concert industry, as well as looking at how to develop secondary community events and all the other types of events in the facilities. So including like things like the draft and whatnot. But being 3 weeks in, I'm not overly active in a lot of the stuff right now. But in the future, that's where my focus will be. My background, though, comes from running Capital One Arena and doing 225 events a year. So, I mean, running every major concert there was over the NBA, NHL, Georgetown basketball, like where it was literally 225 events a year. So I worked nonstop. And that's what, you know, I also traveled when I was younger in my career. So I didn't have the balance by any means, and definitely saw the struggles in it throughout my career. And, you know, as I grew older, I started understanding the elements of how I needed to have different balance and what that meant and what it means in relationships, of how you need to find a person that will support you, and you need to find someone that understands that and is willing to be a good partner with that, because it's not everybody that will do that and understands that. And if you don't have that, it won't be successful. And those are struggles you go through, especially when you are going to be a successful woman climbing the ranks and running a major top 10 facility, or continuing to go to an organization and be an executive with the Cleveland Browns. That doesn't always work in every relationship, and you don't realize that when you're young. You aspire to be that, but it doesn't necessarily work. So you have to understand that as you continue to grow sometimes. But one of the greatest things that COVID has done is I have been on more Zoom calls and Teams calls where I have watched male colleagues just struggle being at home and just not even having a clue. And I don't have children. That is not something. I have stepchildren. And they're all older, so I don't have that element of it. But I have just watched male colleagues just not even understand how to deal with the children at home, and how like they now have such a different respect for their wives or for their female coworkers who have to deal with both sides of it. And it has been truly enlightening. And I just smile. I just laugh, because I mean, literally, I've been on more calls that people are like, I have a kid for rent. Anybody want to, I'm going to sell my child. And I'm like, yeah, it's not as easy as you all think it is. And I mean, it takes a partnership.
Yeah, and that brings up a very interesting topic, and that is the pandemic and working remote, and not only what males had to deal with in their new roles, but that added another level of responsibility for females, particularly if you have families. You know, whereas, and Shelly, I'll start with you, because if you can leave the house, come to the office, it's like, okay, but sometimes you can't because of that. So how has the pandemic affected your kind of role as a female in your household and all of that balance that we talked about earlier?
Yeah, no, it's a good question, very timely question. And look, it's been crazy like everybody else, and no matter what your situation, kids, no kids. For me, it's been a blessing in disguise for time because, these 2 years, these first 2 years are very impressionable for her. And that's what you struggle with as a professional with a demanding job. Am I giving her enough, right? Because these are moments that really could impact her. And it's allowed me, to see her, even though when I'm working from home, I'm stuck in the office, from 8 to 6, like I could pop down, for a bathroom break and say hi and give her a kiss and go back up. Or at lunchtime, actually, or commute home. I save myself the time, commuting home. I can actually spend that with her. Those are precious moments that I don't take for granted. So I see the blessing in the, you always try to find the positive moment in chaos. That is it. But it's also made it a bit difficult, trying to, like you said, go back and forth, because we are back into the office and we are working, we are having games, and just trying to find that balance of time. So it's been interesting, but for me personally, it's been a precious moment. And I hear that from a lot of parents that they are gaining time that they would not have had it not been the pandemic, and appreciate those moments, knowing, again, we're coming out of this thing and we're coming out strong. So I've appreciated those moments.
So how about you, Anna? Have you seen any leveling of the playing field with your male colleagues that are kind of challenged like Michele had shared with us?
What's interesting, Kevin, is not really. It kind of goes back to what I was saying about how heavily many of my colleagues rely on their support system, like Shelly was saying. And so I think there's only a few women in baseball operations. And so the majority of the Zoom calls that I'm on, there's a couple other women, but it's mostly males. And I don't have children, and none of the women in baseball ops have children. But a lot of the men do. And so we don't see, my assumption is that their partners are helping them out with the kids at home. And Shelly was speaking earlier about the value of having honest conversations. So I think that is one of the things that I have observed is that they're continuing to rely on that really strong support system that they have to be successful in this industry, even throughout the pandemic.
Okay. So we're going to ratchet up a little bit, okay? And Michele, I want to start with you.
Great. I love that you always start with me.
Well, as I had shared with Shelly, because we're colleagues, I have 4 daughters and a couple that are in sports and what have you, and it broke my heart when one of my daughters had shared with me some of the challenges she was dealing with from like the words that were being used that she was exposed to. Well, all 3 of you shaking your head in chorus on that. And some of the behaviors of men, and it was expected that she was supposed to suck it up and it was supposed to be okay, but no other circumstance would that be okay. The name of our conversation is about the obstacles that women face in professional sports, and I would ask each of you, starting with you, Michele, to begin to just, what obstacles have you faced that you can share with our audience that will kind of bring light to some of the things and maybe some solutions that we'll talk about at the end.
Oh, my list is so long. I can't even begin. My list is so long. I mean, from the simplistic ones that, the aggressive behavior that men are allowed to have, but yet if I don't have a smile on my face, what's wrong with you, or you need to smile, or, the way that my tone is versus a man's tone is allowed, and my aggressive behavior if I hold strong on a deal versus if a man holds strong on a deal. And you have to remember, I mean, for me, I negotiate deals every day with agents and artists, and I was running a building, a top 10 facility, and just for things like that to be constantly said to me, and if you're doing all of the things that I do, and it be tolerated and allowed and accepted, and not even looked once or twice at by a man, but for me to be spoken to continuously about, my tone, or you have to put a smile on your face, or I'm like, for real right now? Let alone the comments, I mean, when I was in my early 20s, the darlings, the babies, the commentaries of that, was, constant. I was, had people literally tell me, I remember negotiating a deal when I was with I was a promoter on the promoter side, and I had an actual building tell me, a man tell me that you're picking this up pretty fast for a woman, as an actual direct quote. And I tend to be actually a very good booker, and I walked into my boss's office and I said, this is going to be one of the nastiest deals I've ever cut on someone in my life. And it was one of the most favorable deals I've ever cut for the company that I worked for. Because, I take motivation and things like that after a while, but it's constant. It's constant. You walk into a room, at least in most of the cases that I was coming up in the industry, and it is perceived you're the admin. You're the person, if you walk in with your man, your boss who's a man, it is perceived you're there to take notes. At least that was how it was coming up for me for my first 10 to 15 years.
All right, and the comment around you're picking this up really quickly because you're a female was supposed to be a compliment.
I did not see that as a compliment, but yes, I think it was actually perceived as.
Right. That
for me,
like,
it was supposed to be.
I was like, hey, Michele, wow, you're
good job.
Yeah, great job. Yep.
I did not see that as a compliment.
Yeah. So Anna, you just referenced you're only one of 2 or 3. Share some of your stories around the obstacles in which you faced.
Yeah, I'll talk about when I was the Major League Translator interpreter when I was one of 3 out of about 70 in our travel party. So I started with in the interpreter role at the same time as every other Major League Baseball team hired an interpreter. The MLB said that all teams had to hire an interpreter, so all 30 teams had a brand new person in that position in 2016. And most of my counterparts at other teams were 20, 30-something-year-old Latino males. And so what I'm getting at is the double standard was one of the hardest things for me to navigate in that position, where I think, first of all, recognizing that a lot of people that I interacted with wouldn't see me as a human being first. They would only see me as a woman. And then the double standard that came with that. So my counterparts at other teams, I would always see them walking back to the hotel with the Major League Latino players that they interpreted for, or I would see them going out with them. But the way that the Latino players on our roster looked out for me was by not walking home with me or by not going out with me, because they recognized that there was a double standard there, that there was people watching, and that there was people that were going to talk if they saw us walking home together or if they saw us going out together. So I think in that role, that was absolutely the biggest obstacle, was just knowing that no matter what I did, no matter what I said, there was always just going to be that double standard. And that perception of me being a woman first and not a person.
All right, so I just need for you to unpack that a little bit more. You weren't seen as a human being, but you were seen as a female.
Yeah, is that what y'all feel sometimes? Okay, thank you.
No, you got an amen in the audience.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. All right, so Shelly, I'm going to add on to that, knowing a little bit about your story. You're one of a few females that run revenue in the league, but then you put the layer on that you're a African-American female, which I don't think there are any. And out of all sports, are there any?
I can't speak to all sports. I know in the NBA, I am the only African-American female that runs a revenue team. So outside of obviously events and booking as a revenue stream for the business, there's ticket sales and corporate partnerships. And so there's, for us in the NBA, who I see us as progressive in the space, there's one chief revenue officer, and then there's 2 female president/CEOs, Cynthia Marshall with the Mavericks, and CEO, and then Gillian with the Clippers, outside of any connectivity from an ownership standpoint.
So what obstacles have you faced that you can share?
Yeah, it's funny because I absolutely understand obviously where they both come from, and I think any woman would. And at one point in career, you let that stuff manifest in you, it could be detrimental. So I think to what Michele said earlier, you've got to use it. And I try to mentally take all of the moments and use it as an opportunity to create awareness, even and I say positively calling it out to people. personally, I'll just give you an example. And all women may not feel this way, but for me as a Southern woman, I cannot stand the term gal. Every time I've heard the word gal, it is a negative derogatory. It's been used, oh, you know, that gal's great in the kitchen, or this gal, you know, it's never been, oh, that gal's great in business, right? Or, I mean, that's not the term, so I don't like it. And men use it often, and they don't use it. They don't mean to use it in a bad way. They just may not have awareness. And I've had an honest conversation with colleagues recently about that particular term. You know, you think of things that just, and some of it is just lack of awareness because they have not seen women in the workplace, right? So you got to try to keep that lens on, and let's keep trying to educate. There's going to be a moment where that turns, right? But we're going to let that be an education moment now. I remember very early in my career there was a big game. I think we were playing the Lakers. And so I got my, you know, nice suit on because I'm like, oh, my clients are here. I'm going to go represent well. And, you know, we got business to take care of. And I remember one of my executive men saying, oh, look at Shelly. And he said it on the open sales floor. Oh, look at Shelly, you know, looking all great for the players. It just completely, like, I just.
That is the number one thing that is constantly said. Like, if you, the assumption is that you're there to try to hook up with the players, or that is what the number one assumption is of any woman.
She's absolutely right. Women in sports, that's it. And to the point, you know, you think, okay, that was, you know, over 15 years ago. And I didn't bring it up at all. I've never brought it up to him. Actually, I should probably reach out now.
Well, it's out now. Okay.
But you know, the point is, and I don't think it was unintentional because this is a supportive leader of mine. But he said it. And I don't think he understood what that comment did to everybody that heard it. Because I've worked very hard to disconnect that from myself because I knew back then if there was any association to that, it discredited every piece of work that I did on the business side. I had an interview actually this morning with a young individual that's looking for that's interviewing for an entry-level role, a coordinator role with us, and she's not from here, but she happened to have a connection to one of the Browns players. And so she was just saying, hey, you know, it was a interview, and she was saying, hey, this individual, I happen to know him from my hometown, and he worked for the Browns, because the question was, do you know anybody in Cleveland? And that was her response. I am literally going to call her after and let her know, don't ever bring that up in an interview. Because while I'm not taking that into consideration, I absolutely know if she's having a conversation with a male, that's the first thing he's going to think about. And so when you say challenges, those are things that that has nothing to do with the work.
Well, so Shelly, can I just add a perspective of that? If I said that, which I think I probably did say that in my interview, it was looked upon as, oh, you have a connection. Yes. That means that you understand our sport a little bit. Why is there a difference?
Yeah, look, I think it's bias. I think because for one, people don't understand. And it's funny because we were saying these conversations. Just a couple days ago, I was at an event with our CEO, with another executive in sports. And, it's kind of like, okay, well, you're walking, with the CEO. I'm a young African-American female. People don't see me. So I try to take it from that lens, right, because they haven't seen us. So hopefully we won't have this problem moving forward. But he literally stopped me aside as we were standing there, and he said, oh, so how did you get where you are? Now, would you ever ask that to a male, even a young male in this business? Would you ever? No, you say, okay, he hustled, he worked, he grinded, and he got to where he is. So I had to literally explain to him, and I led with numbers. I led with where, and so that's not for me for a pat on the back. You know what? We're actually top 2 of all NBA teams in revenue right now in our corporate partnership business. We're top 3 in our Legion business for revenue. Oh. Thank you.
No, thank you.
And so I lead with that, and I do not do it for a pat on the back. I do it so all men know that women can drive revenue, period. And I will continue to do that until the message gets out and gets across.
Yep. So for me, I hear this term about 150%, 110%, and psychologically for me, I'm like 100% is all you can give. But what I just heard you say was, no, 100 isn't good enough. There's all this extra that you have to put on to convince people that don't look at me from a gender standpoint, look at me from what I can produce. And man, that just is not fair. And I know that's why we're having this conversation. But let me ask you this, and Michele, I'm gonna start with you. Do you mind me asking, like, at what age did you think about becoming into sports?
Well, Yeah, so in college, I would have told you I wanted to be a director of marketing for a sports team. I had no idea what that meant.
Okay, so that would have been in
In
your...
my 20s.
Okay.
Like late 2021.
All right.
And I graduated from school. So that was great. No clue what that meant.
Yep.
I was a college athlete, so like I was in sports, always thought this is what I wanted to do. Problem was I got that when I was 25.
Yep.
Hated it. I was a director of marketing for the Wizards. Always been in back and forth with the Wizards. And, 2 companies I went back and forth. No offense to the Wizards, because I still was with Monumental Sports and Entertainment. Just decided I wanted nothing to do with marketing anymore. So then I was like, now what? But so that's what I ultimately, and that's where I evolved into so many other things that I found out other things I really like to do and evolved my career. But yeah, so that's when I knew I thought I wanted to be. I always wanted to be in sports or something. I thought that's what I wanted to do.
All right, so I'm going to use early 20s as the framework for my question, and this is completely off script. Okay. What would you now tell your 20-year-old Michele if you look back going into sports, and Anna and Shelly, this question is coming to you all as well. What would you tell 20-year-old Michele relative to the obstacles that she would face, and what would you do differently based on some of those things that you've gone through?
First of all, there's so much more than being just a director of marketing, because I would never have an understanding of all of the things that are out there in the world of sports and what it all can lead to. I am way stronger than I ever thought I was, and I have way thicker skin than I ever thought I was. And I am just, I shocked the heck out of myself of just how much I could accomplish. I mean, I just, like, fight for it. It really was worth it. Because, I mean, I never would have thought that I could have achieved and continued to grow as much as I did.
Yep. So would you tell
I would do it again.
25-year-old Michele?
I would do it again.
Do it again?
I would do it again.
Have thicker skin?
Yeah, you know, I mean, the thick skin, like, I have grown so much, and I still continue to grow every day. And I would do it again. Okay. I would do it again.
So Anna, knowing what you know now about the industry, your job, professional sports, whatever point that was in time, what would you tell yourself going back then, looking forward, about this industry and how to maneuver through the industry?
Yeah, I would tell myself. I had time to think about it. Thank you, Michele.
You're in a better spot than I was. Thanks.
You chose that spot. Don't forget. Oh wait, but I just forgot what I was gonna say. I got it. I would tell myself that you can't fit in. There's no way you can fit into the box that they want you to fit into. The double standards that I spoke about earlier, there's just too many of them. It's impossible to fit into the box that people want you to fit into. So just be yourself and stand up for yourself, even if you're encouraged not to.
Okay, thank you. Shelly?
Well, thank you both. I had time to think about it more. I'd say 3 things. 1, insert yourself in the conversation. I think especially 20-year-old self, I was standing way back. You just because you're not comfortable, you don't want to say the wrong thing. So I'd say insert yourself into the conversation and have more confidence, because that's grown over time. It's grown by, proving myself. But to your point, at the 110, 120%, you gain more confidence when you've done it. I would have tried to have more confidence then. And then the power of networking. Man, in sports, we meet so many people, and God, I wish I was thinking about that at 20, because I would have leveraged a lot more of those relationships, still be in touch, and so just leveraging those relationships early.
Okay. All right, so Anna, I'm going to come to you. Michele.
I have time to think now. That's great. Thank you.
and as we're kind of winding down, one of the things I like to do is to leave the audience with 1 or 2 things that people can do differently. And let's direct this to males. What are 1 or 2 things that males can do differently to be more collaborative and more respectful for you as leaders, female leaders in sports? What can we do?
I think it goes back again to what Shelly was saying about support and just being supportive and trying to be more, because everybody in sports needs as much support as we can get. This isn't an easy industry. And so for males, just kind of I know it's hard to ask people to be aware of things that they don't know about, but being aware of the fact that things are different for us. There are challenges for us. There are hurdles for us that they don't have, and recognizing those and then being supportive once they've like realized what they are. And it's okay to ask us what's challenging and like what kind of challenges we have. Like, I mean, it took people like a couple years to realize that there isn't like an accessible bathroom for me in a lot of these places. So even things like that is helpful when people recognize that and then start to figure out how they can support us through any of those challenges.
Okay.
My turn?
Yes.
I would say help bring the people, or help bring women to the table, first of all. And then give credit where credit is due. When a woman has an idea, actually give the credit to the woman, or give the credit to the person, woman or anybody. But when you're trying to grow your people, give them that opportunity, but give them credit for where the idea came from. Because I've watched so many times where that does not happen, and it needs to happen. And it needs to happen whether it's women or men. But be a good leader. Bring them to the table, give them the opportunities, but then also give them the credit where the credit is due. Like if an opportunity, an idea comes up, it's okay. That's what a good leader should be doing.
Okay. And Shelly?
Yeah, I think, the first thing is always be aware. Look around. If it's just you, and I'm talking in the workplace, I don't care what you do in your personal time, but if you're at work and anywhere, and it's just people that look like you, like you've got to say something, you've got to do something. So be aware of that. To be active in the hiring. It's not going to change if you don't actually take an active approach. I'm proud of our organization because I think we've been proactive in that space. But, again, my lens is in sales and in that area of the business and partnering, again, with HR and our team. But actively hiring. If you have a pool of white men in your sales role, guess what you're going to hire? Right? Another white male. And that's just the truth of that's the reality of it, right? So how do you diversify that talent? You've got to be active in that measure. And be an ally. I'm very lucky to have male allies, again, and yourself, Kevin, when this was going on, you reached out. Antony's here. Antony's been a great ally. I have great female allies as well. Tracy Mark, our CMO, is here, and Alberta Lee, that heads our HR team. It's a team effort. And if you don't have allies and people that are willing to step up, say something, and actually do something, it's not going to change. I am very... for all of the challenges that we talked about, and we can talk about that for days, I think there's a lot of momentum coming of people wanting to change. And if you're a part of that, I think we're going to see some success moving forward.
I would also add that women need to be allies for each other. I think you're seeing that more and more now, but I can tell you earlier in my career, women weren't necessarily allies for each other. And I do see that is getting better now. But women were not necessarily allies for each other, and that was a challenge. So I think the more and more that women start supporting each other and bringing each other along and making sure that they're making a point of that for each other. I'm big on mentorships and looking at those types of opportunities. That's a huge part of the success as well.
Okay. So as we wind down our conversation, and this time I'm just going to ask you to fit in wherever you choose to. I won't call on you. What message would you want to share with the industry? And maybe it's your perspective leagues, but what message would you say if there's one thing that you could tell our industries around how we should treat women to help them to make sure that we're removing the barriers and they can progress just like anybody else? Is there something you'd like to tell baseball, football, or basketball? Please.
Well, look, I'll start. I'd say give women a chance. There are very often, and again, not to be too candid, but there could be a white male coming right out of college and they'll get a director role, right? Doing whatever, right? Sales, marketing, anything, right? People are like, oh, they'll figure it out. For a woman, what you mentioned earlier, you have to have a resume, you have to have experience, you've got to have 10 years of experience versus 5. And how are we going to have experience if we're not in the roles? I just said there's one of me. There are, 2 presidents. How are we going to have experience if, so give women a chance. We've proven we can multitask and have more responsibilities. There's a lot of skill sets there, but you have to give women a chance. So that would be my message to everyone in sports and outside of sports. You know, we're sitting in a space where there's been only the second female CEO of a Fortune 500 company in our history, 500, Fortune 500. This is only the second in history. Like, this isn't just a sports issue, so give women a chance would be the message.
I would echo the same thing. I mean, you know, when given the chance, they will prove themselves, and you know, I mean, it's seen across the board. There was 5 women GMs when I was one of the GMs, and for NBA and NHL facilities, we would get together on some happy hours and always talk. And there was 5 of us, and you know, I mean, we were such a great support, and we still are. I still get invited, even though I'm no longer a GM of a NBA and NHL facility, and I've changed roles, but. We just, you know, that's the whole same messaging is just like 5 women and we could rock it. I mean, there's no reason that we couldn't do the same job that other people can do. And it's just you have to give people the opportunity.
Okay. And then I would just add on to that is once women are in, give us the support that we need to succeed, find out what the barriers are and remove them so that we can have the same success or have the same opportunities for success as our male peers.
Yeah. Well, Michele, Anna, Shelly, I mean, I've been honored to be a male on this conversation, and there are things in which I'm going to take back that will help me in shaping kind of my behavior and support for you and our colleagues with the Cavs. But one of the things that I'd like to lead the industry with is in diversity and inclusion, it's about recognizing talent comes wrapped and shaped in all sorts of forms and fashions and genders and in age and race and what have you. And to the extent that we as a league, we as an industry can understand that the more talent you have, regardless of how it's wrapped or shaped, the more production you're going to get, the more success you're going to have. And women play a huge role in that. So on behalf of the Sports Equality and the Pro Sports Assembly, we thank you. And for the audience, we thank you as well.